All right, artists. So we've already learned how to shade three-dimensional shapes, to turn flat objects that are 2 dimensions, length and width, 2D shapes like a circle and a square and a triangle, and turn them into a sphere and a cube and a cone. Those are 3D. They have 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. And we're going to learn how to shade those to make them look more 3-dimensional. We're just going to do one shape. We're going to turn a circle into a water droplet, which is sort of like a flattened sphere, okay? So it's got shadow and highlight, the dark part, which is the shadow, the light part, which reflects the light, which is called a highlight, and that's gonna really make it look 3-dimensional. I'm actually gonna show you a real water droplet right here in front of the camera, and you can see just this single, almost perfectly circular water droplet has shadow and highlight in it. So if you see these small reflective areas, and then that dark rim, and then this light rim over here, we're actually going to be drawing that, and that's what's going to make our water droplet look really realistic. So the first thing that you need to do is remember that we need to make this circle bigger rather than smaller. I know water droplets are actually really small, but it's going to be hard to shade if we don't draw it big enough for us to actually work in. Okay, so I'm going to take a soup can. I guess this is canned corn. Yum. And I'm gonna draw right around. I'm just gonna do one big one. If you wanna do a couple to practice, that's fine. I'm gonna have you do some different sized water droplets at the end if you need more practice or want more practice, because usually we don't just see one water droplet, we see lots of water droplets, and there are lots of different sizes, and that's gonna make it look more realistic. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna remember that there's dark area on this side, and it's almost like a reflection, like a mirror. There's like a line of symmetry right here as far as dark and then dark on the opposite side, okay? So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm going to take my pencil. You can do this whole thing with a pencil on white pieces of paper. I'm gonna show you later what it looks like if you have a gray piece of paper and then a white colored pencil, but don't worry about it if you don't have that. We can just do this all with regular pencil. So I'm gonna use my regular gray pencil, and I'm gonna start shading, and I'm gonna stop, because I need to make sure that I don't shade too far and cover up the area with the highlights. Now, if you do accidentally, don't worry about it, because you can go back through with an eraser and you can erase the highlights. But we want to keep them as pure white as possible because that is going to be the brightest part, the shiniest part of the water droplet. Once you've drawn those in, kind of looks like eyes, doesn't it? You can actually draw your highlight any shape you want. I've seen them circles, arcs, trapezoids, squares, it doesn't really matter. But what you're doing is you're going to be shading, just like we did in the other video with the circle that we turned into a 3D sphere. You're going to be shading really dark and carefully along this edge. And then as you get towards the middle, curve those lines, curve your shading. We really want to be drawing in one direction, shading in one direction. And I want you to curve your lines to follow this curve and slowly release the pressure in your hand, in your fingers, in your wrist, so that your lines are getting lighter and lighter until they almost disappear. Now, don't worry if you can see some of the lines, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a tissue or a piece of paper towel or just your finger, and you're gonna start shading. You're gonna start rubbing the pencil to get a little bit of that graphite on your finger, and then start blending it in to the white part of the water droplet. It's already looking pretty 3-dimensional, but the water droplet is sitting on a table, right? Or sitting on a surface. And so we actually need to add a shadow on this side. Make sure that the shadow doesn't go too far up here. You want to keep it right along this opposite edge. Give yourself a little bit of a guideline here, almost like the smiley part of the smiley face. Go ahead and fill that in nice and dark. The darkest part of any shading is always going to be along the edge. Be careful not to go inside the water droplet. That shadow stays right outside the water droplet. Just like we did on the inside. Gently release the pressure in your fingers, your wrists, your hand. Fade it out like this. Now, I think that looks pretty realistic. pretty 3D, but to make it the whole picture look more 3D, I'm going to add a medium circle here, a small circle here, two tiny little circles, medium, bigger, medium. Don't make it super even. You can make it sort of random. Those are gonna be my water droplets. And I'm gonna shade each one, even though they're all smaller, I'm gonna shade each one the same way that I did the big one. This is key. You cannot change it up. You can shade water droplets any way you want. Like if you look at this one that I drew, the highlight is completely different, right? That's totally fine. But when you're drawing water droplets on the same picture, they're all getting hit by light from the same source, right? My window is over there. And so it's coming this way. It's hitting the water droplet this way, which means each of these water droplets should look exactly like this one that I just drew. Otherwise, it's not going to look exactly right. They'll still look cool, and it's totally worth practicing, but it's not going to look as realistic as it would, as convincing as it would if you made sure that the shadows and the highlights were in the same spot on each water droplet. Let's see if I can do this quickly and show you what it'll look like. Don't work this fast. You can slow it down. All right, so see how that water droplet just looks like a mini version of this one? And this one, teeny tiny. You gotta get a nice sharp pencil for this one. Dark along this edge, dark along this edge, shadow. Cool. See how that's starting to look like a lot of water droplets? I can do that for each one of these, and pretty soon I'm gonna have something that looks like my page is covered in water droplets. All right, thanks for following along. And feel free to share your drawings with me, with your teachers, because now that you know how to draw water droplets, you'll be able to do this and totally impress people.